Welcome, divine beings and beautiful souls, to Tarot Parlor. Today we're going to go ahead and do another deep dive of the gifted program. So when I say programs, I mean all of them. So from the Gate program, PAX program that we've been talking about, and even the Indigo program that existed in the 1950s and 60s. So we're going to be talking about all of that. Let's get started with a little bit of the Gate program or the gifted program up here. Some of the things that went wrong with that gifted program was that, well, first off, let's start here. Parents, of the gifted students, when they found out the program was going on, began approaching the staff and the teachers and saying, hey, we were gifted, I'm a gifted parent. That's why my kid must be gifted. Or I must be gifted because my child is. Or they came forward and said, I was an Indigo child. And they asked if they could be put on the program, like if they could attend the program as well. And the teacher had to explain to them, no, you can't do that. This is for the kids. And so some of the parents were saying, well, then my kid won't participate then. That kind of thing, if you won't let me be there. So it was these parents were trying to invade or keep their kids off the program if they couldn't invade the program themselves. So parents wanted their own child's place in the program. But why? Well, we're going to answer that in a second. And it has to do with how catered the Indigo children were in their program back in the 1960s. They were so catered to that everybody wanted to be on that program. Okay, so part of the things that have gone wrong with the gifted program is the salt and peppering. Okay. This kind of thing where parents are like, oh, well, we'll fix your program. We'll take care of that. Or other programs, that exist, other gifted programs wanting to ruin your study with salt and pepper with an X student, hindering an X student, student X. They would bring a student into the school that fit all the criteria, that you would put them on the program, but they would be there to hinder the test results. Completely there to hinder the test results. And that is what they were for. They were literally salt and peppered in there. So that would ruin the program and get it taken out of your school. And here's an example. Basically, so if you had these stats going on, here's student A, B, C, and then there's X, obvious X. If you can see A, there's some fluctuation. B, there's some fluctuation. C, so these are natural organic studies. But then student X comes in and they would be like, it's a non-organic result of, their participation. It's just non-organic. So the stats were compromised because of student X in the program that were salt and peppered and put in there by saboteurs. And some of them were these parents that were rejected from the program. So that messed up the program a lot too. Another thing, that people often ask is, we're going to switch over to here. No, we're going to go over to here. Was that because, well, I'll just tell you, it was because there were people that were expecting another program like the Indigo program. They thought that this Gate program or this PAX program or any other program that was coming in was just the Indigo program under a different name. And either they missed out on it back then and they felt they shouldn't have, or get this, they were waiting for another program to pop up so they could just go ahead and be the ones to put themselves in the program. Yeah, kind of like if, let's say, an Amazon plant got closed down in some state, right? It gets closed down. And let's say it was, let's not do Amazon. Let's just say some business had a warehouse or something in one state. And it was a really awesome business, great benefits. I mean, it was a really great thing to be a part of. And there were people whose applications never got accepted. but they felt that they were good candidates, or there were people that were just, working there for a long time, and they felt that, hey, when the plant closes down, or when it did, let's say the plant closed down and everybody got laid off. They're like, oh, wait a second. If this thing ever starts up again, we're going to be the ones that are in that door. Whether it was the people that just had applications in or the people that had worked there for the duration. They were going to rush that door and be the ones in. And that's what happened when these programs started coming out. Well, every time they come out, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s, current day, whenever a program starts in an area, these indigo chasers, let's just call them that, these indigo chasers think, oh, our program's back, it's under a different name. Or they think they can turn it into the program. They think they can hijack it and turn it into what they want. Okay, either or. So either way, they're going to be the first ones in the door, and everybody moves to that state, everybody moves to that school, because they're all trying to get in to some secret indigo program that they know inside their mind, their psychotic voice is telling them that's what this is. So they're running gifted programs for everyone else, trying to rush indigo programs. You see what I'm saying? It's like every time a gifted program shows up, it's like rush week. Yeah, it's really ridiculous. Okay, so there were indigo programs in the 1960s and 1950s. Okay. However, they were dysfunctional. They were the first of their kind, and they catered to the whims of and eccentricities of the subjects. Why? Because before this, only royals tested these people, only royal doctors and so on, and that was the way that royals did it. That's how they tested greatness, is taking away their boundaries, taking away consequences to see how much power or gifts would actually develop in the person, if without boundaries. So they were actually getting away with murder. I'm not going to say the word, but they were getting away with almost literally murder. Okay? No boundaries, complete dysfunction, just to let them show their indigo strengths and powers, their special abilities. Yeah. So, of course, a person gets addicted to that. And a lot of things were paid for them. They were given homes, or their mortgages were paid, things were given to them. So, of course, people want to be on that program. Absolutely. People want to get away with what they're drawn to dysfunction and being able to get away with things. So the families and the subjects, after they closed down, after the indigo programs closed down for all the trouble these people were in, okay, and the control, the indigo families, the families of the indigos and the indigos themselves began controlling and running the studies. And once the study's ruined or compromised, it has to close down because it's not organic anymore. And so they shot themselves in the foot by compromising it, by not just letting it happen organically. But anyway, so those families and subjects went underground in the 1960s and 50s, and they went off grid, waiting for another indigo program. Yeah, and they had it planned out. Like I said, what they were going to do is, at the time, they planned to branch out to the schools and put themselves on the programs. Just like I said, that's what they had planned to do. Okay, we'll just sit here in this little bitty town, and so-and-so's over in their little bitty town, and they kept tabs on each other and waiting for news. Just waiting for news of a new gifted program, and then they would rush it. And of course, that runs stats. So indigo towns are said to exist all over the country. Towns that mimic another town, okay? But the spelling of the name is off. Or the diner is missing some of the details. Or the gas station has less pumps than the one you're used to seeing. There's something off in each one of these indigo towns, but they almost exactly mimic a town, a small American town that you've driven through. Okay? Indigo towns. So that's where they live. Now let's ask this questions, because the indigos were the study that were in those studies, the 1960 studies, were trouble. They got away with murder. They have no boundaries. They're very dysfunctional, and they think they have extreme powers and gifts. So are they truly indigo, or are they occult practitioners? Makes one wonder. I will say this, Masonic orders, okay, and there's two kinds of Masonic order. Well, there's many kinds, but there's two in America you need to be concerned with. There's American Masonic orders, and then there are British Masonic orders, and then there are German Masonic orders. And, so when you see the British here, why? Why are so many people, trying to join the Masonic British orders instead of American ones? What's going on? Well, anyway, that's just a question I threw in there. But anyway, these Masonic orders think that they are the only ones with indigo children. Very dangerous thought, or very controlling thought, isn't it? Perhaps it's because they only accept their indigos that are their members. They don't accept anyone else at all. And I'm not talking about accepting them. They deny that they exist. So the Masonic orders think that they are the only ones with indigo children, and any non-members that are indigo children are not accepted as somebody having powers. So is this control of the indigo population, so that only those in these orders can be identified, or receive their recognition for who they are, for their gifts. So some of the orders that we can talk about here that do this are like the Mormon orders, the Seventh-day Adventist, and the Worldwide Church of God. I'm especially familiar with these two that look for indigo children, and if they don't join, then they don't accept them as indigo children, or they accept them as some kind of contaminated. Well, I would say all three, they do that. But any of the Masonic orders do that. So, that's getting on to something else here. Let's go over to here. No, we're right on target. Okay, so with this, here's the situation. The programmers were not gifted with special abilities. They were smart, they could study and research, they could perform the studies, but they weren't gifted with any kind of special abilities. But the program started getting them. The programmers started getting special abilities. Did they? Or did they become witches and occultists so they could control the gifted? I say true. I think that's what happened. I think the programmers were like, wait a second, this is freaking me out. So they started beginning to learn this stuff, and they decided that they were going to become witches and occult practitioners so they could have power, like literal magic power over indigo power. Also, did witchcraft and occults and the Masons take over the gifted program? Did they take it over? Well, they try to every time. Or are they just gamification now? Okay, so let's talk about that for just a second. Some of these programs are not because you have special abilities, or it's not to develop that or to study you that way. It's not just to study or to help you develop, right? Some of them are for this. It's called gamification. Okay? And when I say gamification, it's because they want to train the gifted person, the talented person, the person with gifts, to be able to perform on control, okay? Under control. So in other words, they want a programmer that forces you to do actions like spy, harm, cheat, tell on your parents, lie, do whatever to bend, control, and manipulate situations, close down jobs, all kinds of things. So, control of gamification gifted programs put them through this. Yeah, it's not even about using their gifts. It's literally about just making them a spy that controls society. That's literally what it's about. So they hijack the program with gamification. And to participate, they have to be willing to pay the price. Participation forces you to pay the price. What kind of price? Money, time, or ultimate prices. And we won't get into that, but I'm sure you guys can figure out what it is. Okay? So, the gamification part is what you got to be worried about. Because when you put your kids in these programs, if they decide to gamify your child, then they'll have a programmer that tells them what to do. And we'll be training them to understand commands by a visual. You know what I'm saying? Like when you see a red marker, okay, next to a tarot card, here's your command. This is what you're supposed to do. Okay, so that's gamification. What other thing I wanted to say? Okay, so another thing about this is sometimes with the gifted programs, at least in the 1970s, when they would take you overnight, like they would say, we want to do an overnight study with your child. Okay, why? What do you want to do? And they'd be like, we just want to study them on, organic actions, like outside of school and outside of, the perimeters of other children and the perimeters of the home. So they give you some story like that. And so they take your child off, and they sometimes it has been said that those children have reported that they are taking eggs from their ovaries. They're taking biopsies, and they're implanting neurochips. Okay, so those things go on. And so think about that. If your child gets fitted with an audio device where they can hear a controller or a programmer and you can't, then your child is under somebody else's control for the rest of their life until that's over. And is it a legitimate government study at that point, or is it a corporation study that's studying your child? Okay. All right, so I gave you a lot to think about. Organic studies. Your child being controlled with actual gamification and also being taken for overnight studies and medical things being done on them. As well as these indigo people that could be as old as your grandparents now. Okay, not just as old as your parents, but even as old as your grandparents, that may that may have connections to these indigo towns that are used to this, are used to being able to break the law and get away with things because they feel they have indigo powers. And some of those indigo powers are literally just witchcraft and occultism because they're faking it. Let me know what you think down in the comments about any of this. And I can't wait to read. Blessings.